Hey, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into, so let's just jump into it. First question comes from Based Elg, who says, is it fair to judge this offense this year by the way they improve in the second half of the year? Do you think that ownership and GM are not judging too harsh as well, since we know that the offensive linemen have been in and out, and the fact that a lot of offensive pieces this year are rookies, or also our offensive coordinator is a rookie at his position? That's a good point. I don't know. It feels like if Kevin and Barry were on the hot seat, they would not leave the offense to be headed by a first-time coordinator with a rookie quarterback. I agree. I also think the Browns would not have traded Joe Flacco if they felt like wins and losses were going to determine their job security for this year. Okay, where was I? I don't know if it feels like Kevin and Barry on the hot seat in offense. They would not leave the offense to be headed by a first-time coordinator and rookie quarterback. It just feels to me that they are trying to get improvement and develop a system with some experience and pieces having around a future pick, or unless we have one in Dylan and Sanders. What's your thoughts? Thanks. So I've been pretty firmly in the camp of like, hey, man, the problems have been so bad offensively that I don't see a positive path forward with Kevin. Now, I'm always willing to listen to people who disagree with me, whether it be about firing Kevin or keeping Kevin. One of the best arguments I've heard for keeping Kevin is to consider what the Titans did with Mike Vrabel, who got fired under similar circumstances to Kevin Stefanski, right? That defense in Tennessee was not talented. It seemed like it fell apart, and that led to Mike Vrabel getting fired in Tennessee. And right now, Mike Vrabel looked like he might win Coach of the Year out there in New England. So, if you're somebody who wanted to hire Vrabel, despite the fact that he had gotten fired from Tennessee from the 2 losing seasons that he had there, you should probably be more open to the idea of letting Kevin coach through this. Now, I wasn't a fan of hiring Vrabel for those reasons, so I can't say that I stand on that. I think, if you want to get a good opinion on like why it makes sense to keep Kevin, I think Pete Smith of the OBR has had some really solid articles up explaining why he still is behind Kevin Stefanski despite how this season has gone. And I think he's offered up some very solid points there. I don't know if it's enough to convince me yet that Kevin should be kept, but I do think, it's a rough hand here being dealt. I do think he can do better with this hand, but maybe there's a level of exhaustion that he's feeling with it. For me, I'm ready to move on offensively. I think we can do better, even if Kevin were at his best, and this is my main argument for wanting to move on. Even if we were to get a better version of Kevin Stefanski, I'm not sure if a better version of Kevin Stefanski is the best that we could possibly be on offense. I think that we could search for better than Kevin Stefanski as a head coach and as an offensive mind. I still think he's always going to be behind guys like Kevin O'Connell, guys like Matt LaFleur, the Kyle Shanahans of the world. Like, I think he's a tier below that. And I would like to strive to be better than, where Kevin can be at his best. And that's a tough move. I think moving off of Kevin is not an easy move for this franchise to make. But to me, I think that's a move that if you make the right decisions, I could find myself supporting, especially if you are thorough in your search for a new coach and not just like going out to hire some big name just to get people excited again. Like, if you really go out there to try to find the best mind. But there are some solid arguments for keeping Kevin, right? And if you want to hear those, check out Pete Smith. All right. The next question comes from Cam Vex, who says, "Hey Q, what are your thoughts on the DePodesta move? Could it mean that the Browns are moving going forward? Any chance this could unlock the front office without his presumed meddling? Or could they bring in John Dorsey to be a player strategy officer role?" Man, I just don't know what people think that like DePodesta was doing in that front office. He wasn't doing what people think he was doing. He wasn't meddling with the Browns' personnel decisions. Like maybe sometimes was he asked for an opinion? I think, of course, right? You know, you're going to ask the opinion of all the people that you respect in the organization. But I don't think he was overruling Andrew Berry. I don't think Andrew Berry was working with handcuffs. Andrew Berry's the executive vice president of football operations. He's been allowed to do what he wants. Obviously, the Watson trade, getting to the bottom of who brought that to the table and who wanted to go forward with that will be a long mystery that nobody has the answer to right now. And maybe DePodesta is a big part of that, and that's why his impact with the team, you know, has been less and less since the trade has happened. You know, I tend to think that's more of a correlation with Andrew Berry being more comfortable in his role as his executive vice president of Cleveland Browns football operations. But, you know, we will see, right? But I don't think much is going to change there. Maybe they bring in maybe they bring in somebody to continue to do some of the work that DePodesta was doing as far as like streamlining the organization goes. But I think a lot of that work is done. And I think the reality is much more boring than any of the conspiracy theories allow for, which is DePodesta's job was basically done in 2022. By the time that the Browns got to a point to where Jimmy Haslam trusted Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry enough to go out and buy an NBA team and put his resources into that and put his mental resources into that and to put a lot of his mental resources into the MLS team that he bought to. By the time you got to that point, you really didn't need somebody there to structure the organization and streamline it. So, like, he just had no purpose after a while. And that's what the reports indicate. I mean, this is not the first time. This is the first time he's took a job. But this wasn't the first time that you had heard that DePodesta would potentially take a big MLB job if it was offered to him, that he's looking to do something different or that he might not return to his role in Cleveland. Because I think the work has been done for a couple of years here in Cleveland. I think, you know, we can say whether it's right or wrong, and I don't know, we haven't been proven right or wrong about this, but, you know, Jimmy seems to trust the structure of the front office and the football operations, and that was DePodesta's job, was to get that to a place to where Jimmy could trust it. So, like, after that was done, what was DePodesta going to do? Like, I think the reality is just much more mundane than that. I don't think he was the emperor whispering behind Darth Vader's ear. I think, you know, if there were a personnel decision that was made because of meddling, it's probably because the owner meddled, and that's probably why the owner hasn't fired anybody yet. Move on to the next question. Another one about DePodesta, who says this: Joe, DePodesta, I feel like is a good thing. Leaving, what about you? Again, I think it's neutral. I don't really think it's a big deal. I know some people are making it seem like DePodesta left Cleveland to like escape a fire, but the job he took was the president of baseball operations for a Major League Baseball team. Those jobs don't just like magically come open. If he had took like some kind of weird position at like an NBA team or something like that, or like a minor league baseball team, then I would understand people saying, oh, well, he just got out of town real quick. But I mean, president of baseball ops, that's like an upgrade, like from what his position here in Cleveland was. So why would he not take that, right? Like, there's, even if the Browns were doing great right now, like let's say the Browns were Super Bowl contenders and DePodesta took that job, it wouldn't really surprise anybody. But like, oh, he took the promotion job to baseball. Okay, like that makes sense. You know, I think this is just a promotion for him. We got more questions, but real quick, let me thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. If the Browns pick, and this is from Jason Rich, if the Browns pick is high enough and we get one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the class, do we go tackle or wide receiver with the Jags pick? This is going to be a decision that's going to be personnel driven, right? I would say this: if you feel really strongly about a wide receiver and really strongly, equally as strong about a tackle, I think the tiebreaker goes to tackle, because tackles are much more difficult to find than wide receivers. So I think you would default to going with the tackle there. But ultimately, it's going to come down to who do you feel strong about? What positions do they play? And is there somebody in a position of need that you feel just as strong about? If they get to their pick in whatever the Jacksonville pick ends up being, and there's a tackle that they love, then go take the tackle. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter if there's a wide receiver there, go take the tackle. If there's a tackle you love, take them. But if you get there and there's not any tackles that you like, but there's a wide receiver you absolutely love, take the wide receiver. It's going to be personnel driven, I would hope, and not position driven. Again, you solve your needs in free agency. You don't draft for needs, you draft for talent. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter if you draft a certain position, you didn't solve it unless that player is good. And if you don't think that player has a high potential in the first round to be a good player for you, then you didn't solve shit. You just wasted a pick. You know what I mean? Chuck says this: hey, Q, let's say the Browns draft a QB high in the first round next year. Do they roll into 2026 with a rookie and 2 second-year quarterbacks, or do you see them cutting either Shador or Gabriel and signing a vet to help the rookies develop? I think it would be highly likely in that scenario that either Shador or Dylan Gabriel, the one that shows more promise throughout this season, the rest of this season, one of those guys would be kept. The other one will be shipped. You would imagine the guy that they keep is going to be Dylan, because Dylan has been marketed as a backup quarterback. But I see no reason why they can't be Shador as well, right? Like, I know that people have marketed and spent time telling you that Dylan can be a backup quarterback. But, if Shador goes out there and plays well, then, he could be a backup quarterback too. Or if he goes out there and plays better than Dylan Gabriel, why give him up? Go ship Dylan Gabriel for like a 6th-round pick to like Miami or something like that, and then just kind of move on. So I think that's what these 2 quarterbacks are playing for. Who's going to be the guy that gets traded in the offseason if the Browns go after a quarterback in next offseason, which I think is very, very likely. So, yeah, I don't think they're going to go into the season with 2 rookies. I think they're going to have to pick one after this year that they want to put in that developmental role, and then, well, not even really a developmental role, but in that backup role, and then move on. Covain says, do you think Cedric Tillman's career is heading towards a similar trajectory of Donovan Peoples-Jones? Shows flashes, but can't ever get a breakthrough. I mean, he hasn't even had the flashes that DPJ has had. DPJ has had sustained seasons. You know what I mean? I can say this. I think he's more talented than Donovan Peoples-Jones, but he has not put it together as long as Donovan Peoples-Jones has, and now he's in a very similar place in his career to Donovan Peoples-Jones, especially like next year if he doesn't have a great end to this season. So, yeah, I think he's headed towards a similar path. FDBD says this: all the talk is around a top 5 QB. If the Browns play themselves out of a top 5 pick, would we be better off getting an offensive lineman or wide receiver with our 2 first-round picks versus trading a haul to get inside the top 5? Now, it depends on where the Browns land, right? If the Browns are like the 6th pick in the draft, the haul to trade back into the top 5 is not going to be that much, right? So you wouldn't have to give up 3 first-round picks. You might have to give up like a 2nd-round pick, but not 3 first-round picks. So I think that the haul could be pretty reasonable. If the haul's reasonable and the quarterback's there, do it. But let's say that, there's no way of getting in the top 5 and you just got to pick out the top 5 and all the quarterbacks are gone. Then yeah, get the best player you think is available, whether he's a wide receiver or offensive lineman. Because again, the draft picks don't solve anything unless the player is good, right? We can talk about, we needed this position, we needed that position. If the player is not good, just because you drafted the position does not mean you solved it, right? We drafted Jedrick Wills. He was not good. We didn't solve left tackle, Dan is human says this. Hey, Q, after the Jets fire sale, is Sunday a must win? It was already a must win before. I disagree. I'm sorry. I disagree. I don't think the Browns have any must wins anymore. There's such a the record is so bad that they don't have any more must-win games, in my opinion. Well, let me read the rest of the question. It was already a must-win before. Now the Jets don't have 2 of their best defenders. Is there anything less than total dominance inexcusable? Who the fuck do we think we are? We're a 2-win team, man. We're not going to dominate. The expectation shouldn't be for the Browns to dominate. Also, if DG struggles against the Jets defense, do we bring out Sanders this game or keep DG in? I partly asked because I have DG in one of my fantasy leagues. I don't think the Browns are in must-win territory. They're a 2-6 football team. There's no such thing as must-win when you're 2-6, right? You suck. You're not making the playoffs anytime soon. And now, you got a lot more to think about than just what your win-loss record's going to be. So, I don't think this is a must-win game. I don't think, the Browns are being judged right now based on their win-loss record, and we'll see if that's the right call to make. If DG struggles in this game, do we bring out Sanders? I mean, I would be fine with it, but, you got to ask yourself, do you want Sanders to start against the Baltimore Ravens next week, or do you want to hold off a week and get them to the Raiders game? At this point, I think people just want to see Sanders just to have some spice in the season. But yeah, I mean, if Dylan Gabriel's not playing good and he gets benched, I don't think anybody's going to cry for him, right? Like at that point, it is what it is, man. You've gotten 5 games. You're playing a bad Jets team. You can't play well against them. Ain't nobody going to cry if you benched at that point. Luke says this, do you think the Browns didn't trade David Njoku because they will give him the rest of the season to see if he's worth a 3rd contract and let him finish his career in Cleveland? I think this is closer to a Nick Chubb situation. I think they're probably going to let him walk in free agency. I think that the Browns value David Njoku at a certain amount, and David Njoku values David Njoku at a certain amount, and they're not going to meet there. And maybe the market corrects that for them, but I think they're going to have to part ways at the end of the season. Al Zeke says, hey, Q, it's obvious that the Browns' most glaring need is quarterback. The Titans get a 1st overall pick. Would you trade up? And what would you give up in a trade considering what our needs are at the line? Well, again, this all is going to be conditioned on what picks that the Browns have, right? Let's say the Browns have the 4th or 3rd pick. You don't need to give up 3 first-round picks if you're only asking the Tennessee Titans to swap back to 3, right? They're going to be able to get their guy. You're going to be able to get your guy. You would ask the Titans to you'll give the Titans maybe a 2nd-round pick and call it a day and do the swap, right? And I think that's fair. So if the Browns, again, they have 70% plus odds. Let me look up the exact number here again. The Browns have, according to ESPN, 77.3% odds to get a top 5 pick here. So the odds are that they're not going to have to give up much to swap with the Titans relative to what you're used to a quarterback being worth, right? I don't think we're in 3 first-round pick territory. I think we're talking about, especially in a draft that seemingly has a deeper bag of blue chip players, you're probably talking about, giving up a 2nd-round pick, which to the Browns ain't going to matter that much because they already got the extra 1st. So, yeah, I think that's what you're talking about having to do. Maybe a 2nd-round pick and one of the many 5th and 6th-round picks that you have there, but really, maybe you get like a 6 back or some shit like that. But, yeah, it's not going to be that expensive of a trade. You know what I mean? If the top 3 quarterbacks from Cam Cutups go 1, 2, 3 before the Browns pick, what would you do with the remaining first round draft? What do you think Andrew Berry would do? I mean, look, Andrew's going to be open to options, right? I think he's going to have an idea of who he wants in this draft class and where he thinks he can get them. And, he'll be open to trading back. If he doesn't think that he can get the trade back that he needs, he'll just take the player. They will probably just draft best player available at that point, right? I think that's what the Browns draft strategy has been in the first and second rounds under Andrew Berry. And I think that's been a good strategy. I'm always okay with best player available. Again, you draft for need. You think you fill these holes, but if the player's not good, you didn't solve shit. So, when you're talking about the first round, second round, draft the best players that you think, the players that you have the best feeling can thrive in your system, and then move on from there. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.